Greetings, viewers, and welcome to our Sage 200 installation and creating a database webinar. Today's presentation will cover the installation of Sage 200 Evolution, as well as the process of creating a new database. Right, let's get started. Now, you're able to obtain installation of Sage Evolution from our FTP site. So it's simply a case of logging on to our FTP site, downloading the relevant installation, and then beginning with the installation process. So once you've completed the installation or the download process, it's a case of going to go browse the install and then simply look for the setup file. So I found my setup file and I'm going to go run that. And we can begin with the installation. Right, so the first screen that appears is just details about certain prerequisites that you need to complete before beginning with installation. And we've got details of those prerequisites there. And then I can simply go next. And then I need to specify this destination folder. Now, the default install location is C program files x86 Sage Evolution. However, you certainly can go and specify a different location. And I'm going to go and change that to a different location. And then just details about the shortcuts. So for example, do you want to create a shortcut in the start menu folder, a shortcut in the desktop, etc. Right, so I've specified my installation folder and I can proceed. And then there are really 2 or 3 different installation types. We've got the complete, which installs all the program features. The typical, which installs the most common program features, and the custom option, which allows you to go specify the features you wish to install. So I'm going to use the custom option, and we then have a SQL Server verification screen. So this option tells us is that in this instance, I do have Microsoft SQL Server already installed, and it is running on this terminal. And however, if the system did not, if the install did not identify that SQL was installed, it would then prompt you to run the SQL Server installation at this point. And then just details about the configuration of the Windows firewall, and I can then continue. Right, at this point, I can now select which components I want to install at this point or during installation. So I'm going to just, at this point, only install the core modules. So I can simply go and deselect the modules that aren't going to form part of my installation. So just a case of deselecting those options. Right, and yes, I think that's all we need to deselect there. And I can say next. Right, then we just have details about the end user license agreement. And at this point, we're ready to begin with installation. Right, so now the installation is installing all the relevant application files that are needed to run the program. And we'll simply wait for this process to complete. Right, so there we have it. We've got the installation process has been completed. You can obviously prompt to run the program at this point when exiting. I'm just going to deselect that option and then finish. Right, so the installation has been completed. Now I'm just going to go through to the program files directory, and I'm going to go find the folder where I've specified the installation would need to be installed to. Right, so there we have it. And I'm now going to go find the evolution exe file, which is the file used to run the application. And there we have it, evolution, application file. And we'll then just wait for the login screen to display. Right, so you're then going to have a login screen where it's going to prompt you for an agent name and a password. And at this particular point, you won't have any databases here because you need to go create a database. So remember is that on your network environment, you're going to install Evolution and SQL at the server terminal, and you're going to go create the database at the server. So I'm going to use the new option. And the creating of a company is region or country specific. So depending on which region you're in, simply specify the relevant region. I'm going to say South Africa. And then it's a case of specifying your SQL server name. So in this particular instance, SQL server has been installed and I have an instance name. So on the drop down, I'm going to specify that instance name and then specify the authentication method I'm using, either SQL or Windows NT authentication, and then the company name. Right, and then just details about the admin password. So the default admin password and username is admin. However, we highly recommend that you change this password. So we've got the details there. I can just show the password information if I need to, and I'm going to use those details when logging into the application for the first time. However, we recommend that you do change this password. Right, so next, and we then need to specify a common database. Now, Evolution as a database runs in conjunction with a common database. Now, the common database stores your, for example, your form layouts for your documents, reports, etc. And you need to then link your database to a common database. So I'm going to then once again specify the SQL server name. And the default common database is Sage Common. However, I'm just going to go create a different common database in this instance. Right, and just say next. And it tells us that it hasn't found a common database and we would need to go create one. So I'm going to say yes to that. And then we now have details about the tables that are going to be created for our common database. So finish. And it's now going to run through the process of creating this common database tables. What you'll notice is that we do have a help button on these screens. So it's simply a case of clicking the help button. The help file will then open and you can pick up any relevant information that you may inquire about the creation of a common database, creation of a company, etc. on these particular screens. We'll just wait for this process to complete and then we can continue. Right, at this point, I now need to go register my common database. So I'm going to run through the registration process, and I'm going to specify the name that I want this registration, this common database registered as. And then in this instance, I'm just going to specify a demo Sage 200 common database for the time being. Right, so demo Sage 200, and next, tell me the modules that I've registered for, and I can finish. Right, so once the common has been created, I'm now going to actually go create my own database, which I'm going to be processing transaction in. And in a branch accounting environment, you need to specify, is this database a head office or a branch? So in this instance, the head office. And I can now go specify details about the company, the physical address, contact information, etc. And I can also just bypass this, or I can leave these options blank. And then once I've accessed the database, I can then go to common maintenance, company details, and complete the information there. Next, and then very importantly, details about your financial accounting year. So you need to specify the closing date of your financial year. So I've specified my details there. And then very importantly, the financial year. Now, when creating a new database, Sage Evolution automatically creates 5 financial years for you. However, it's very important that you specify year 2 as being your current financial year. Simply that you've got year 1 available. And so very importantly that you specify your current financial year being year 2. Right, next. And then just details about the GL account structure. So do you want to make use of a standard structure where you've got a master sub-account setup, whilst a segmented structure? So I'm going to use standard with a master sub-account structure, and then specifying your tax processing method, be it either normal tax or payment-based tax method. So specify your relevant details there. Next. And then with regards to your chart of accounts, do you want to make use of a character chart of accounts or numeric chart of accounts? So your character chart of accounts will look something like that with character names for those accounts. However, you can use numeric, and you'll then have a numeric chart of accounts in this format. What we also have is we've got charts of accounts based on certain industries. So on the drop down, you can specify the type of industry that you're in, and then based on that, you're going to have a chart of accounts which is relevant to that particular industry. So I'm just going to use the general chart of accounts and being a character chart of accounts and say next. We then have the login security. So login security just enables you to specify certain requirements for login securities. For example, the minimum password length, the password archive limit, etc. So I can enable that, and then those particular options will become applicable with regards to user passwords, logins, etc. Now, just remember is that if you enable login security, you can't revert back to original settings. So just determine if you want to make use of this option within your database, or just make or not. So either case of select it or leave the option deselected. And then we just have details about the database name, your SQL Server instance, and then look at the bottom of the screen, we've got that information there. So it tells you this is the installation version of Sage 200, your database name, the common database name, and the company name. So we can continue and start creating the database. And we're then going to run through the whole process of creating the company. Just wait for the process to complete. And then once again, just to mention about the help file that you've got available should you require any details about creating the database at this particular point. Right, next we just have a Freedom Server setup. So in this instance, I didn't install Freedom Server, so I'm just going to bypass this Freedom Server setup. And there we go. It just tells us that we've now got our login details. So as you can see, I've got my company there. I've logged in as the admin agent, and there are my details. And just a message that it tells me that my demonstration period will expire in 30 days. So I can just do registration later. And it's now going to open up the application, run through a couple of updates, ensuring that all the files that are necessary within the database were in fact created correctly. And we'll then be able to access our company. You just wait for the process to continue the validation. And there we go. We've opened up our database. We can just, now we can then go and access the relevant modules, and we then have access to our database. So as you can see, we've got details about our company we're working in, logged in as the admin user, and details about the common database, and the relevant information about the SQL instance, etc. Now we can just go and begin creating our master files, etc. Just notice that under General Ledger, if I go to my maintenance and I go to my accounts, just go to back one to accounts, I've then got my character chart of accounts, which is based on the general settings, and we've then got the account set up there. And now it's simply a case of going to go to your customers, your suppliers, stock items, and adding your inventory items, customers, suppliers, etc. We do have the ability to import master file records, and this can be done either via the data distribution services or the data import and export facility. And it's just a simpler case of creating that information, your master file records information, in a CSV file, and then simply using the data import or the data distribution services to import information into your database. Thank you for watching. It's over and out for me, and goodbye.